Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're talking about cylinder heads, and this is primarily for the 0304 Cobra, Mach 1, Marauder, and even the Aviator. So for 2003 and 2004, they are the exact same heads and cams for the Mach 1, the Cobra, the Marauder, and the Aviator, so you'll see a lot of controversy on that. I did a video a while back about breaking down part numbers and stamps, and so we're going to be looking at the revision on the far right. So just remember how it starts with A, B, C, and then goes A, B, A, C as the revisions go on. So here's a cylinder head off of an 03 Cobra, and here's where you can find the part number. It's on the right-hand side of all the cylinder heads as you're looking at the exhaust port. Now, all of these dual overhead cam ones will have that 2C5E part number on the left-hand side, and we're going to be looking at the right-hand side where this one says AG, and that's going to be giving us basically the breakdown of which version of the cylinders that you have. So here's another picture of it. You can see in the top where it's circled and says 02, that's the year that it was made. And so this is the 2002 casting, and then there's even a clock going around the whole thing with dots, and that's said to be the month. So it would tell you the year and the month of when that was done. So the very first heads that came on the 03 Cobra would be the AF and AG heads. Those are the ones that were said to also have the head tick problems from exhaust valve guides being loose on the driver's side head. And a lot of that comes because there wasn't sufficient cooling in the head, which we'll get to in a minute. But it was more of a sound annoyance issue. There were very few, if any, failures from the head tick. It's just something that you would hear. And there were actually companies, I think MRT was one, who basically used a car with head tick as a test mule to prove that there was nothing wrong with it. They beat the living heck out of the car. It made the noise, but it never had any failures. Okay, so then there was a revision made for the recall that you've probably heard about. So any engine that was produced from November 1st, 2002 or earlier would have been part of a TSB or a technical service bulletin. And so that casting came out with the new DA as part of the ending. So your car would have a DA on it if that cylinder head was changed. And then the biggest way to tell is if the casting on the passenger side would still be an AF or an AG. And I'll show you what happened with my Mach 1 here in a minute too, so keep that in mind. But basically, if the car did develop head tick, which was still possible on any engine, then of course it would be fixed under warranty, but an actual TSB went out for all the engines that were produced from November 1st, 2002 and earlier in order to have the car come in and have the new head work done. Now, there's a lot of controversy over the blue paint on the cylinder head. A lot of people say if you see it on the driver head, that means it's an updated head, it's a revision. And this was something that Power Nation TV even came out and had said as their script. And so there might be some truth behind that, but the real way to tell is the casting number. So if it says the DA on the head, that means that it was the cylinder head that was put out for the revision to fix the valve guides on the driver's side, and it was mainly on the exhaust valve guides. But this is the clip that a lot of people probably saw and then said, okay, if I see blue paint, that means I have a revision. But you have to check the DA stamping for it. Some Ford technicians will say that they were asked to also paint the head once it's been repaired. And so maybe that was earlier on in the process. Maybe that was before new heads were available. Maybe that was on a head that had been repaired. Or maybe that was part of the inventory process before Ford started painting them themselves for inventory and sending them out. So that could be another thing to think about. All these rumors come from somewhere, but this was a post from the Mach 1 registry where somebody said that they had dealt with several cars, and the cars had gone out and months later come back and had the same repair done again. And so they were asking that Ford tech to start painting some of the head blue to mark that it had actually had the revision or it had been repaired. Okay, and so here's a quick breakdown too of the valve system, and you can see it's the valve guides. There's intake and exhaust ones. The exhaust valve guides are what basically would come loose. So here's a picture of the valve guides, and here's the cylinder head with the valves removed, and so you can see those valve guides up in there where the valves would go up and down. So if you want to check what heads you have, the easiest way is to slip your cell phone down through here with a camera on and take a look. I'll show you how to do that. And it's good if you unplug the brake master cylinder plug here just so that you're not hurting any wires or connections. But I was able to get mine down in here, as you can tell, and you can see on mine, here's my casting for my 04 Cobra, and so it has the DB heads on it, which it should, which are the 9-thread heads. And sometimes you can even go over here and find a little label here. So this was showing a build date here for January of 2004. So that's kind of fun to find that too if it hasn't eroded all the way. The passenger side is a clear shot. Just get up in the wheel well and you can see it clearly written here. So you can see those DB casting heads for my 04 Cobra here. So again, right above that, you can see that the engine was made in 2003. That top left circle area will tell you the year. And the rest of the casting is pretty much the same. But anyway, that's how you can access it and take a look at it. So for my 04 Cobra, you can see the build year there at the top, 2003. DB heads, very clear on both sides, and they match. And so that's kind of the way to tell is if it matches, that's more likely that it hadn't been changed or had a different revision head from the assembly line. Here's my Mach 1. On the passenger side, you can see it has an AG head. So that's one of the very first ones that were made. It looks like it says 2002 up in the circular gear one. And here it is on the driver's side, however, I do have the DA head. So that was most likely something that was different. You can see some blue paint in there as well. And so it's kind of hard to say whether it was like that from the factory or after the fact. Let's take a look at the spark plug holes too here. And I made a video about this as well because a lot of people see a collapsed diode and think that a piston has slapped the spark plug. But as you can see, it's impossible for the piston to contact the plug. The only way that diode really gets bent is either from detonation, or if the plug is shot out and it bounces around, it can knock the front of that ground strap down. But anyway, just wanted to show you what it kind of looks like with the cylinder head here. These are 4-thread heads. And so all of the castings, the AF, the AG, and the DA ones, those are all going to be 4 threads. And so what I'm going to show you here is we're going to pull a plug out, and if you watch it, it only takes roughly 4 full revolutions for the plug to come out. And so that's because there's only 4 threads in the cylinder head itself. So we'll go ahead and pull this one out, and I'll show you kind of what it looks like here. So as you count these threads, you can see that we're only using about 4 threads off of the tip of the spark plug. There's plenty more threads on the plug itself, just not in the cylinder head. So again, as you go to put this in here, you'll see, here we go. We're going to go ahead and put this plug down in the cylinder head. And you'll notice how it's only going to take about 4 full revolutions for these to become snug. Now, this is where the problem happens because you really want to go no more than about 14 foot-pounds. Some even say 11 foot-pounds, very light. If you go too tight on these, and watch these revolutions again. I'm only going to go around about 4 times before it bottoms out. But if you go too tight, you can damage the threads. And with only 4 threads, that's enough to eject the plug out from the forces of the combustion and also the vacuum. It just kind of pulls the plug up and down until it spits it out. So too tight or too loose can cause these plugs to spit out. Now on the back of the head, this is the passenger side, so it actually has the little coupling here for the hose attachments to go into the heater core so you can have heat when you turn on the heater. Okay, so the driver's side is actually just a freeze plug that's just flat. And that's the problem, is on the driver's side head, the coolant comes to the end and it just stops. There's no real way for it to completely circulate. Now on the passenger side, it does have a way for it to escape. The hot coolant gets to the end and then it goes into the heater core of the car and recirculates back into the radiator. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these off just so that you can kind of see. And so the head cooling mod that you may have heard about will basically, on the driver's side, it'll knock the freeze plug out where this would go on the driver's side of the head and connect the back of the cylinder head. So it's a good modification so that the coolant doesn't just deadhead. Okay, so I'm just removing this so that you can kind of see what's inside. Again, the driver's side won't have this attachment. It'll just have a flat freeze plug in its place. So you would basically knock that plug out with a screwdriver and a hammer and put in another attachment that make head cooling mod kits. So you can see this is where the coolant would circulate throughout the cylinder head. They do have other kits too that don't require you to remove the transmission and get back in there. And these other kits will knock out this freeze plug that's right here on the end and attach into that. And it goes up and over the cylinder head. So it's probably just as effective. It obviously won't flow as much as this bigger one in the back, but the routing on it is kind of interesting because it comes out here, goes back over and connects into the head, and then back into the front of the radiator hose. And so these are the head cooling mods, not to be confused with a head cooling edition that was made for the DC casting heads. The DC casting heads were the ultimate ones that were actually made for the Lincoln Aviator. And all of the DC heads were produced in 2005, well after the Terminator was made. Now, Ford Racing did offer a DC head that was ported, and it was actually ported by Roush. They're very few and far between to find, but that was something worth mentioning. Also, being that these heads have the same casting number on them, you would think that they might be interchangeable, but they really aren't. They're side-specific only, and only the DA heads were able for you to use a driver's side on the passenger side, but that required manufacturing differences as they were being produced. So if you have two DA heads, then one of them was actually a driver's side one that's been altered. Now, it's not exactly entirely true to say all 03s have the 4-thread head and all 04s have the 9-thread. This is especially true for the 10th anniversary Cobras like the one my brother has. They were built last, and a lot of them, including his, have the 9-thread DB heads. In fact, my brother was lucky enough that his Mach 1 did as well, so all of his 4-valve cars were the DB heads, including his 03 cars. I want to give a shout out to Terminator-Cobra.com. It has all the information that I was using for this, as well as searching around on some forums. But it's a very good website. It has even more information talking about some earlier heads. It gets into the cams, all kinds of things. So I'll put a link to that in the video description. Make sure you check them out. It's a great source for Terminator knowledge. Anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel if you're new, and if you're already following, make sure the notification bell is on, and that way you won't miss out on any new content. I'll also put a playlist for my Mustang Archives videos, my Mustang maintenance videos, and some of those, so if you want to scroll through those videos, they're in the playlist in the video description. Thanks for watching.